We can't start on time though, or we can't start early,
It
excuse
actually
me. We
says
can't.
2:45.
We're actually late.
Yeah.
What?
Did it say 2:45?
Yeah, it says 2:45.
Oh, then they announced 3,
They
okay.
made a mistake.
Yeah,
Okay.
you're
time-
late.
I'm late then.
Yeah.
Okay, first rule of
Moving
meetings,
along.
always start on time. I thought it was
Maybe the
when they
first
said
rule
3.
should be
So it's,
know when your meeting
when do we
starts.
finish then? 4:15 then, okay. All right, hello everybody. Hello. Sorry about the confusion about when we were starting. As you see, I was walking around, didn't want to start before the time when people were going to arrive, but I was wrong with that. And so I'm also glad because we have every seat filled, and I didn't know what was going to happen if somebody came in later. All right, so
Lock the door.
so we go from a theatrical thing in there and all of this great red-blue stuff to meeting planning. What's wrong with you people? Anyway, so it's stuff that I like, and I'm glad to have a chance to share. So I'm going to tell you what the desired outcomes of this are, and then I'm going to ask for some reasons why you're here. So desired outcomes that you would have more understanding of the elements of a good meeting, that you would identify just a few key facilitator skills, that you would be inspired to try out some new approaches. Now, many of you know this stuff, but maybe there'll be a new tip in there for you that you might want to try out. And then ideas, I'm hoping that we will come up with some ideas for how to spread good meeting practices within Braver Angels. And one of the reasons why I wanted to do this is that Braver Angels is so volunteer driven. And when people get paid to show up and be part of terrible meetings, at least they're being paid. But if you're a volunteer, why do that? Okay. So in some ways, knowing how to meet well together is key to the success of Braver Angels. That's my motivation for doing this. Okay. So now I would like to hear from a few of you. If you would introduce yourself. The room is warm, isn't it?
It is.
Yes.
Okay. So, but we'll be finishing 15 minutes early because we started 15 minutes late, so that's good. Okay. So just a few of you, if you would introduce yourself, say where you're from, and then why you chose to come to this session on energizing meetings. So who would like to do that? Go for it.
So I'm Liam McCone, I'm down from Vermont, and I'm working on organizing veterans and military personnel. And we have the unique situation, we're gonna probably only meet on Zoom until we get a certain number of people in one area that makes sense to move the people instead of the information. So
Okay, and you're here for?
to get your insight into what is, we tend to keep introducing ourselves and eat up the meeting.
Oh, okay. Okay, good. That's a good practical thing. Yes, thank you for that. Yes.
Hey, I'm Todd Lester from the Western North Carolina Alliance. We're just getting, reconstituted after COVID.
Yeah.
We've lost a lot of people.
Yeah.
Don't exactly know why, because I wasn't at some of these meetings, but a recent meeting we had, something felt off, and we lost another volunteer. So I think this is like the most important thing for us going forward, because you could lose good people if it's not really focused.
Yeah, good. Thank you. And they're having far too good a time out there, just ignore that. Because what we're doing is more important.
We're having an energizing meeting over there.
Yeah. Unlike, finish your sentence. No, anyway, so Bill and I go back for 30 years, and so he is the only one with permission to treat me that way. So somebody else had that, yes.
I'm the blue co-chair for the Fairfax County, Virginia Alliance. We come in with agendas and pretty well-crafted questions, but inevitably someone talks all the time and other people don't speak, and we want some tricks about it.
Yeah, okay, good. How about somebody else? Yeah.
I'm interested in what to do if you're a member of a meeting where you
Ooh.
are not leading it and you want to
Yeah.
be able to set it on track.
Yeah, okay. Ooh, yeah. Well, good luck. That wasn't what I was planning to cover, so I'm sorry I called on you. You're just a troublemaker, you are, yeah. So I'll try to refer to that at some point. Okay. So I want to start with, so here's the plan. We're going to begin with actually a more systematic way to think about what are common problems that come up. We're going to have you do a little exercise there. And then I'm going to do a presentation of this handout. I like one-page handouts. This is one page, okay? There's a lot more to be said, but I put stuff down that I thought I could communicate in a brief amount of time. And then we're going to then I'll be asking you what from what I have presented would you like to try out or reinforce or something or bring back home, some nugget from that. And then if we have time, I'd like to do some brainstorming with you about ideas for bringing more meeting competency to Braver Angels at large, okay? Because not everybody could be here. So, common problems in meetings. What are they and what is their impact is the question. So we're going to do this then. We're going to give you a moment to take some notes and some reflection. What are some common problems in meetings? And here we're not going to so much, you can call on your experience with business meetings, whatever is fine. But I'm mostly thinking about common problems and volunteers come together, the sorts of things we're doing here. What are common problems and what's their impact? Okay, so think about that for a moment and then we're going to have you pair up to share those and we'll harvest them. So a moment of silent reflection. What are some common problems that you see in meetings? What are they? What's their impact? A moment of personal reflection first. So about 30 more seconds. Okay, so when I say go, I'd like you to pair up with somebody for 4 minutes to share what you come up with. Don't leave a third person alone at the end of the aisle. I didn't get my pair, but no more than 3, preferably 2, because you just have 4 minutes. Go.
That would be us.
All right.
How many meetings have we done? That's it. Okay. Cool. I've been to about 3 meetings and dozens of days. And I find that the things that end up shrinking the group, having Vivian walk out the door saying, why the hell did I come? Is this addresses very well. You have to compensate them. They have to find meaning what the discussion was. If it's just spilling time, they're immersed in the meetings before. Right? So you can't have that because it isn't right. If you pay them, they'll stay. If you don't pay them, They got it in training. They make it valuable. That's hard. If they have structures, number meeting, there's more than one. That's the great thing about Gray Brain. There's several structured kind of meetings, and if you stick to the script, some people will walk out and find a job. Some, that's a plus. So it's not just as easy as this. Let's sit down and have a meeting. We've got to talk about the politics. You develop structure that ensures things don't go down, ranking everything, people will fund the production, those tax over every single trust, even individual, for example, no one ever addresses it. You just spoke and have a question. I don't have to put the question in. I put the question in the moderator, chairperson, whoever. Separate my questions from you and me, puts it over here, so that when you answer it, it looks at us, not me.
One person that talked too long. There were a couple of cases here and other cases too that the topic that was presented was not what was talked about.
In this,
And then every now and then a quiet person doesn't get a chance to speak. And I think some of that's a topic of personality. I've seen people come and leave early. I did a session today that I felt it was another here in the physical. But they gave us each person like a time limit to talk about the but the moderator that was on the opposite side interrupted them and said, "We need to."
Okay, clap once if you can hear me. Clap twice if you can hear me. Clap 3 times if you can hear me. Thank you. All right. The last group I had to go to 4. Don't want to push it to 4 claps. Okay, so who would like to start? Let's do this in popcorn fashion. There was a lot of energy in the room there. I noticed around the problems. Yeah, go for it. Which one?
Strong personalities dominate, like I sometimes.
So we could use you as an no. Anyway, so when you say dominate,
I'm gonna take over.
yeah, give speeches,
Yeah.
suck the air out.
The air out of her.
Right. Okay. Okay. No, she's not doing that right now. I'll be the one to shame people, not you. Okay. This is called taking control of the meeting. Okay. So somebody else. Yeah.
We both think that meetings should start on time and often they don't.
Yeah. Just sort of people meander.
Yeah.
Yes.
That there can be a lot of inhibition to speak freely because of the judgmentalism at the meeting.
Yeah, so that one then, so something has happened in the meeting, so what would that, how would I see that? I mean, what would the judgmentalism, like, how would I see it if I was a video recording?
That people are afraid to disagree because it's a meeting situation, even though they do disagree.
Okay, okay. And that would be a meeting where disagreement is asked for?
Not even necessarily, I mean, just to be more specific, it's
Yeah.
like I work at a high school,
Right.
there's a lot of conversations, there's a lot of what we used to call, political correctness or,
Right, right, okay, yeah,
focused
yeah.
ideology kind
Right.
of thing, and so
Yeah.
people are, I know people are disagreeing because after the meeting, people will talk about it, but at the meeting, everybody's
got it.
afraid to be judged.
Got it, yeah. Is that a problem or not these days? Yes, okay. So somebody else over here.
I would just add on to that, during Bravery Angels meetings, like, we had a small group, we ended up getting to know each other, and I feel
Yeah.
like there was this almost emotional desire to agree with each other
Okay,
sometimes.
so,
Even though it was a Braver Angels meeting,
right, and so that's a norm can get created
Right.
where just differences of opinion are against the norm, they're not tolerated, yeah, okay, yes.
Yeah, rule non-followers, which come in two flavors, those that are just well-meaning but bad listeners, and the other people that are not well-meaning and are anarchists and just don't fight or
Yeah, and so rules, for example, rules,
guidelines on how to structure the conversation.
okay, so they just don't
Particularly
go,
in our workshops.
they don't go along with it, they're, yeah, you've laid it out and they're just,
Even when you said, "Hey, everyone okay with that?" They didn't raise their hand and say anything.
right, but afterwards they just take over, okay, yeah, yes,
Poorly designed agenda, so that at the end of the meeting, oh, I'm sorry, we didn't have time for
Yeah.
number 6. And our friend here said, yeah, you never get to number 6. So the
no,
agenda
yeah,
has to be,
and then meeting after meeting, you never get to number 6 or 6 through 10, yeah. So that's, there will be some things I will be addressing in some detail here and then some I'm not. That would be one I'm really gonna address, because that prevents a lot of other problems. A lot of what we'll be saying is how do you prevent stuff by front-loading the meeting with your ground rules and so on. So thank you. Somebody else have one, yeah.
Clarity in ground rules. Are we talking about meetings? Or are we talking about Braver Angels meetings?
Any meeting you want?
Any meeting, okay, because they're distinctly different. He was referring to meetings,
Sure, sure,
and the whole purpose of Braver Angel structure
right,
is to make those meetings for people who don't get paid.
right,
Make that time meaningful for those
Exactly.
people. That's its purpose.
right. Yeah, that's right. And I was giving you permission, everybody goes to meetings, to say anything, but I'm not so much interested in like where the boss dominates the work group. I'm not interested in those as much, but the more peer-oriented meetings, which is what we tend to do. Okay, yes.
Establishing group cohesion where there's agreement on what the shared priorities are, and at the same time integrating newer members
Yeah.
who are still getting clear around those priorities.
Yeah. So this is, this is something, there's a whole thing we could discuss which would be group development. And I'm not doing that so much today, okay? I'm much more focused on particular meeting plan, but it'll relate to that, but I'm just trying to set expectations here because they're very important issues, including around people not feeling safe to talk, and so not going to be dealing with that so much today as like how do you plan and execute a meeting. So yes.
as a facilitator, I feel tension between like structure of having this clear purpose and knowing what's off topic, but then also this organic thing of sometimes what seems off topic can lead to a new idea.
Yeah.
So
So
how do you know the difference?
yeah, the structure versus flexibility thing is a tough facilitator role. Yes.
So you're not having a clear process for decision making.
Yeah. So you just don't know. Did we make a decision here? And then did we make that last time? Did anybody? Who else thought we made a decision? That just paralyzes groups. Yes. Go for it.
Kind of along that line, but my pet peeve with meetings is when we set out with an objective and everybody like talks and has great ideas and like we talk in circles a little bit and then the meeting ends because it's an hour long and like we don't know the next steps or like did we actually like what are we doing now? Like we didn't address the topic, clearly.
Circles and
Clear action.
yeah. So you like action. And
Yeah.
Yeah. And you don't know where you are at the end.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And then people stop coming back.
Mm-hmm.
I think right along with that, I love that comment. But when that action does get pointed out, does it get assigned? Does that delegation happen evenly? Like sometimes if it's just a volunteer group, everybody's like, I'm just gonna do it. And then like Pam, who does everything, is like, okay, I'll do it.
Right.
You gotta make sure that.
Yeah, and then Pam burns out, and then the next one goes up, and then that person burns out, and yes, exactly.
I almost have to say every meeting, so many great ideas. Is this our priority? Who would do that?
Yeah.
And I become the naysayer.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Absolutely. Let's march on the state capitol. Okay, who's freaking going to organize that? And Pam is not going to do it. Okay. Everybody should have a Pam though. Why don't we have a Pam role? Anything else that hasn't been said? Yeah.
I just find it really hard when someone takes the
Yeah.
And everyone can kind of tell, but maybe what they're saying is like really vulnerable or personal, so it feels
Yeah.
harsh to
Yeah.
bring them back, but
Yeah.
you kind of tell it's not.
Yeah, they've told their story, and you don't want to say not on topic.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah. Okay. Anything else that hasn't been mentioned? Yeah.
Too long.
Too long. Meetings are too. And for you.
Parts of meetings that are too long.
Okay. Dragging. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Okay. One more.
This, for the elderly, I'm only hearing about half of the questions. They're talking to you.
Okay.
I'm hearing your response.
Could you hear her? Okay. Okay. So I will do some repeating. Thank you for advocating for yourself.
Bill,
Yeah.
I've got an extra hearing aid for you.
and Smart Alecky, my old friend Smart Alec, has his hearing aid. So that was number 2, Bill. You have 3, and then Martin takes you out of here. That's another skill. You have a bouncer. Anyway, so thank you for advocating for yourself. Okay, so you have a handout, and so I will.
Extras?
Yes, gentleman over here has one. I wonder why they didn't give you one.
I walked in late.
Oh.
I wasn't actually late.
You weren't actually late.
No.
That's what you call denial. Okay, thank you. Glad you advocated for yourself as well too. Okay, so this is what I came prepared to share, and there'll be other stuff that I'll talk about, and maybe you'll talk about as well. So the problem, and you've just documented, many meetings are poorly planned and run. They frustrate people, waste their time, and even good meetings tend to function below what groups are capable of. And the solution is these ways that we've evolved to a way of doing good meetings that engage people and accomplish things. Engage people and get stuff done. Okay? The classic group theories back from even 70 years ago, the instrumental and the expressive goals of a meeting. Expressive is people connecting. Again, at work, you just maybe show up, but what we're doing, people have to feel engaged, connected, get to know people, and get stuff done. If you don't have both of those, you don't have successful meetings. Okay? And so what will happen in some groups is they'll get too lackadaisical, and then you get, Pam takes over, or somebody comes in and says, boom, we're going to do this, and they tighten it up, and then people feel they can't really be themselves there. So none of this is original to Braver Angels. There are best practices for meetings rarely implemented. And I'm being blunt about this. Rarely implemented. And it doesn't matter what your training is. I'm a therapist. Therapists are no better than anybody else at running meetings. They might be really good at running a family therapy session, but not a meeting where you have to make decisions on something together. So these things are rarely implemented. And what I can tell you, I'll do a little testimonial, is that this approach is quite rewarding. And I've been doing community engagement meetings for, I'll go back to 1998, very intensively, with a lot of, everybody should get a handout as they come in.
Sorry.
Yeah. And it is possible, and these are with everything from teens to elders to every kind of conceivable group. And it is possible to design and have meetings where people, at the end, you're looking for people to say, I'm excited, this was good. That's what I'm suggesting you aim for. Not just, okay, but like, yes. This was a good use of time. That's the goal. It doesn't always happen. Life doesn't always turn out that, but that's not to shoot for, well, we had another meeting and it was pretty good. Because if it's pretty good, a lot of people are not going to stay with us. Because you can't command them to come. The boss can do pretty good meetings, and you say, this is better than I used to before, but it won't be Braver Angels. And what I'm really going to cover in this time we have are some very general elements. I want to plant this thought when we talk about later what Braver Angels might do. I've been thinking of developing a whole series of modules that would go through group development and other kinds of things. So this is just the bare bones here today. So overview. So before the meeting, the planners need to know the purpose of the group, have thought through the desired outcomes of the meeting, and have developed a written agenda with realistic timelines to accomplish those desired outcomes. That's about 60% of it right there. What is this group? What's our lane? What's our mission? What are we doing? We're the Alliance here. Are we a subgroup, a working group? Are we to develop a plan to bring back to the other group? Are we the deciders? Okay, what's the nature of this? Is it a one-time group? In which case you would begin with, this is what we're here for. We are the working group on. Okay, so what's the nature of the group? And then desired outcomes, and I'll talk about that in a minute. And then a written agenda, again with realistic timelines. And this is where you have to flex. You just have to guess how much time you're going to need for things, and you don't ever go, it's now 1 minute past our deadline. But what's the advantage of having some idea of what chunks of time things would take and letting people know that? What's the advantage of that?
Stay on track.
Yeah, people kind of know. People can self-police, if you will, if they know that we've carved out a half an hour for this. Okay, that means it's a pretty substantial amount of time. Or whether this is a report that is going to take 5 minutes. It's just a way to orient. So, because there are people who know how to be in groups and know how to do meetings. And if they know what this is about, they can help. Who was talking about how do you can be a more constructive group member when things are clear. So let me talk about desired outcomes. And these have been I pushed these in Braver Angels and such that people tease me. Steve Saltwick, teased me today from the lectern up there, which was terrible. Anyway, he said, Bill Doherty, because I've just beaten this into people. Desired outcomes are what you hope to come out of the meeting with. They are not the process of doing the meeting. The agenda describes the process, but the desired outcomes, and I learned this from my mentor in this work years ago. A desired outcome is something you want when you finish the meeting and people leave. They say, "This is what we accomplished. We learned about something. We made this decision. We have a first draft of something. There's something that is tangible." Desired outcome is not to discuss, to explore. Those are processes. What's the discussion for? Is the discussion for our understanding of something, which is great? Is the discussion for us to come up with a preliminary idea, pre-decision? Is in this meeting, because maybe we've discussed something before, a desired outcome is a final decision on something, okay? So something that the group comes out of this with. So I began this meeting. In fact, I do this for every presentation I do, for everything I do. I don't put any time into an agenda or a plan until I know what I want to accomplish at the end of it. Mm-hmm. If there's one thing to take from this, it is the discipline of a desired outcome. So a number of you talked about decision making. If you don't say where your desired outcome is in terms of a decision on maybe Alliance is going to try a workshop or whatever group it is, or you're even going to decide what your book club is going to do next, whatever. If you don't say where the desired outcome is in terms of the stages of decision making, I may think we're just going to talk about it and get everybody's ideas, and you may think we're going to actually decide. I haven't been clear about that. So to brainstorm is not a desired outcome. To get everybody's ideas on is not a desired outcome. Why are you doing that? Now, you could decide that a desired outcome is a number of ideas of what we might do next year. Well, the brainstorming would be a process to get there. And that you're going to come out of that with a big list. Okay? When you're developing desired outcomes, if you have anything that's a process, take it out. It's the outcome. It's the outcome that you're looking for. So a report, for example, is not a desired outcome. It's something somebody does. Learning about what that committee did is a desired outcome. Okay. Now, I say that there's some things that are routine in meetings that you don't have to put in a desired outcome. If the treasurer is always going to give a report, you don't have to put that in a desired outcome. Those are just the routine stuff, okay? They're just going to give a report. But what do we hope to come out of this? And then the big thing is around this is, again, outcomes, not processes, and then realistic desired outcomes for the size of the group and the amount of time you have. And so that's why I never have a group just sort of brainstorm desired outcomes. You get a list of 8 or 9 things and you have 90 minutes. And so condense them. So even for this convention, I was on the original planning group. And so what do we want to come out of the convention? And my view is if you can't get that down to 3 or 4, even for a 3-day, 4-day conference, if you can't get it down to 3 or 4 things, you have too many. Okay? And so really, and if you're planning a workshop, by the way, for me it's the same kind of thing. What do you want people to, what knowledge do you want them to lead with? What skill you might want them to lead with? What attitude? So classic thing is they learn more about the family aspects of, political difference. They have skills, they have some new skills for talking, and they feel inspired to try things out with their families. That might be the 3 desired outcomes of the families and politics workshop. What people, they leave with this new knowledge, they leave with these skills, and they have some inspiration. Knowledge, attitude, affect. And so it's perfectly okay to have something about being inspired in your desired outcome. Perfectly okay. Perfectly okay. It's not too intangible because it's part of what you're looking for. So if you wanted people to be inspired, then a storytelling might be part of what you do, okay, to get everybody into that. Okay, so, okay, questions about desired outcomes. They are hard to do. I'll warn you, they are hard to do because you slip easily into, we're here to explore. We're here to discuss. We're here to share. All those are great, but those are processes. And if you're not all on board with what or why are we doing this, you're not going to plan the agenda as well. Somebody had a question?
Yeah, I was trying to, in my brain, say processes. A lot of outcomes are starting with verbs, and I was trying to figure out if the outcomes are nouns, but then you have inspired. So that's not a noun. So, but is an outcome, if we think of it, almost like something tangible?
Yeah, mostly it's tangible, yeah. But somebody could report they had a feeling too, so that's why I don't want to. But right, yes, but it's not going to be usually to do something. Right. It's not going to be an infinitive, to do something. Right. Yes, yes. So it's a very worthwhile discipline. In the back?
You said a workshop, let me make sure I have this right. You were saying that a workshop should not be designed around the desired outcome.
It should be.
To do a specific thing.
You're right. It's what people leave with.
What do you mean?
They leave with more knowledge. They leave with more skill. That's what they leave with. And then you were teaching them something, you were doing enactments of something so that they get there. Yeah.
So if you're having like a discussion meeting, the outcome could be that everyone has been heard.
That's too group oriented. That's a little too mushy because you want everybody to be heard in every meeting.
Right, but I mean to hear everyone's opinion on this topic that we've set for this.
So to hear everyone's opinion. So the desired outcome would be there. We know everyone's opinion in the group about this topic.
At the end, that's the
Yeah.
outcome.
At the end of this, we know where everybody stands on this.
Okay.
That would be the desired outcome. And then the process would be, you decide on a process for it. Okay. And so the reason I'm saying it is so helpful to orient your group, and what it helps you do is some other things that people talked about, because if you have desired outcomes and agenda, the agenda is easier once you have your outcomes. The agenda is simply a way to implement the desired outcomes. Okay, and even among those, you'll know what's most important. So occasionally, I will put, if I'm not sure about how long something's going to take, I'll put if time, a desired outcome would be the final decision on. Just if time. Okay. Now, the other thing I'll say before I move on is that these are desired outcomes. They're not laws. It's just what we're trying to achieve. And something can come up, going back to what you said, something can come up that, like, oh my goodness, we thought we were going in this direction, and we just found out that's not possible. Oh, then we redo it. But you try as much as possible to stick with those. So for the agendas, then, they're a way to execute desired outcomes. So common agenda elements. Start on time or nearly on time. And my view is, if I'm leading, we will finish on time. I'm in charge of that. I can't always guarantee we're going to start on time. With volunteers coming in, it's not like it's 7 p.m. But reasonably early, because the longer you push it, the longer people delay coming. Okay, but you want to aim to start on time. I would say nearly always finish on time. So my community meetings, when we've interviewed people about, some people have stuck with projects for a decade. And most people years. And when we've asked people, a lot of these are parents and others, why did you stay with it? I knew when we were done. I could tell my family when I was getting home. It was predictable, and it's respectful to people. Let me just push on, I'll do some more questions. So the opening of meetings is really important. My recommendation is that you begin with a greeting. Might be some new people who say, welcome, Todd's here. And then you begin with what this group is. We are the Southern Minnesota Alliance of Braver Angels, okay? If you have a mission statement, read that. This is who we are, okay? A lot of the groups I did, we begin with our name and our mission statement. By the way, it's a good way for people to memorize the mission statement because they hear it at every meeting, okay? This is who we are, including this could be, we are a task group, a committee set up by the leadership group for this purpose. Because, people, this is Zoom or in person, but how many of you been to like Zoom meetings one after the other and you click on, what's this group about? So make sure everybody knows what this group is for. What's our big purpose? We begin every Braver Angels Monday morning leadership team, so it's called the support team. David Blankenhorn reads the mission of Braver Angels every meeting. Okay, we're the support team, and this is the mission. Okay, grounding us. This is who we are, and these are our desired outcomes for this meeting. Okay, and so that's universally, and then introductions or check-in. So let me say something about introductions, because somebody mentioned earlier this in groups. Either nobody gets introduced, or they take 2/3 of the meeting on introductions. Right? It drives me crazy. You have to know if there are new people, new people have to be introduced, and you have to have a plan for that. Okay? And when you're having people introduce themselves, this isn't on the thing, but the handout, but I took it from what we said before, this was on people's minds. When people do an introduction, they need to know exactly what you're asking them. Your name, where you're from, or how long you've been connected with this group, this clinic or this church, whatever. And then if you have another question like why you came, say, and within 1 minute, why you came. Okay? And then you, if they're going on too much after the minute, you say, thank you for that. Like to, so there'll be more time, but hold them in. And then if there are ongoing members of the group, you can ask them to just briefly introduce themselves and where they came and say a word of welcome to the other person. So that you're not going, particularly if you have new people each time, you don't want to have the regulars reintroduce themselves meeting after meeting after meeting. Okay? But my point is that if you're going to have intros, you have to say exactly what you want people to say. And you notice their life story is not in there. Okay? And you're asking what to say. And then, if somebody's going on too long, you have to just sort of, gently, so thank you for that one. I want to keep it briefer. And you can say things like, there will be time for more storytelling later. Right now, just want to do such and such. The redirect, redirect, redirect. There's an old axiom, by the way, in group work, that groups like to be facilitated and individuals don't. Okay? So a member of a group, I want to make sure Gordon is like properly structured up. Okay? But Gordon wants, he's here, he's got a lot to say. And so the big message about
you asked.
Yeah, the big message about you structuring people is that group members know if you're doing it for the sake of the group and not just because you want to be in charge. They know it. They know it, okay? And you're doing it for them. You're doing it for them. So for that, now a big thing then is, introductions aside, for ongoing groups, I highly recommend a check-in question. And the one that I've used in my community meetings that Braver Angels adopted at a lot of our leadership groups is, what's on your mind about our work together? I've just said, this is who we are, we're the Alliance, blah, blah, blah. These are desired outcomes. And they see the agenda in front of them. So everybody now knows what we're here to do. By the way, I don't go through every step in the agenda. That gets really tedious. And then after the treasurer's report, they can read the darn thing. Okay, the thing I said at the beginning is, here's our desired outcomes. They can look at that. Now, if there's something important in there that I need to comment, then I will on the agenda, but don't go through the whole agenda. And then you want to get everybody into the meeting. Because one of the things that happens in some meetings, and by the way, a lot of people talk about somebody dominating, is that not everybody has had a voice yet. And some people will get their voice and others won't. So the check-in question, I recommend I use in every meeting I do, including with like 2 colleagues will do this. What's on your mind about our work together? It took a few years to evolve that question. What's on your mind about our work together? And within a minute. They could take up to a minute. If you're really pressed, you could say 30 seconds, but try to give people a minute. And it allows people to say any number of things, including they missed a few meetings, they're glad to be back, they had a sick kid, they're on their mind, I'm hardly here. 2, I'm really enthusiastic, I can't wait for this on the agenda. 2, I'm not so sure what this group is about. So it gives people a chance to complain, too. They don't do it that often, but it does, it invites it. Now, by the way, if somebody complains, you do not respond. The facilitator does not respond at all to the content, unless somebody said, my mother died, I'm so sorry. But basically, it is just a talking stick. Go around. Can you imagine, and maybe some of you are groups that do that, what do you think the group feeling is at the end of that? Heard. Yeah, it's inclusion, heard. Everybody has spoken. When everybody has spoken, and you'll see at the end, I recommend a check-out question that everybody speaks twice in the meeting. That often doesn't happen. And it has the effect of getting some people not to talk so, because everybody has said something, as opposed to 1 or 2 people. And so it's a temperature taking of a group, and give them a time frame for it. Yes.
Is there anything that's inappropriate for people, or like you have to redirect them if you ask the question?
So the question is do you ever have to redirect, or it's inappropriate? There's a way that people get socialized into this over time. It's open-ended. What's on your mind about our work together? I actually have, and I could send you, I actually have a little set of instructions. So for a new group, I actually tell them what's appropriate. It might be a thought that's been in the mind about our work. It might be you missed a couple of meetings and you're glad to be back. It may be you're confused about the work, you're looking forward to something on the agenda. So I kind of give people, or it might be a brief personal story that relates to our work. Okay, so I give people about 5 categories. And then if somebody, that generally works, but if somebody were to launch into an agenda item, then I would say that's for later. Right now we're doing a check-in. Right now we're not, into the topic. Right now we're just, what's on your mind, we better work together. And always go last if you're the facilitator. Always go last. One of the reasons to go last is if something happened during it, like somebody, I don't know what we're doing around here, or something like that. You go last and you say, so, and here's my idea of what we're doing, blah, blah, blah. You can do a little, and you can do a little makeup there. So the group focuses on the agenda items without lengthy asides and additional topics. So this is a big one. As the leader, you have to be willing to say, that's not what we're doing right now. What we're doing right now is deciding on whether to have a book discussion. Somebody else said, I was at the Brave Angels convention and I learned about this thing with politics and I think we ought to, okay, that sounds important. Group want to talk about this at some point? Cool, we'll put that in the parking lot. Let's take some time, to get into it. One of the reasons you can give for not having a different topic pop up is to say, I don't think we're going to have enough time to do that here. That's a very important, that's going to take some thought and some deliberation, and let's put that on the agenda. And for now, let's stick with such and such, okay? Because otherwise the meetings really go on. There have to be an extraordinary reason, is my point, that something has to be, that's not on the agenda, simply has to substitute today in this meeting. And generally you'll know that. There's like some new information that has happened here. And then you'll say to the group, this sounds really important and let's go for it. But generally, that's not the case. Generally, you can just stick with the agenda.
In the beginning, I was a little late. So did you define the size of a meeting that this works? Because like the moderator forum, we have such a big group, we don't do a check-in with everybody.
Right.
So
these, thank you for that. I didn't say that earlier, but okay. So she's asking what size of group. So these would be, 6, 12, 15 people, a working group that's capable of making decisions together. So thank you for that. That's how I'm thinking of this. A lot of the principles apply to larger groups, but this is, I'm thinking about a group that's going to be over and over, same people, with some people moving in and out. So I can't emphasize enough that if you're leading a meeting, you're helping a group self-discipline to stay on topic. And if you allow something to drift off, you're talking about whether we're going to do a book thing, and then somebody says, oh, this workshop, I blah, 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 blah. If you don't stop that, well, what happens? And then somebody who talked about how do you intervene, somebody who notices we're not friggin' doing what we said we're going to do, their task is either to be silent or be oppositional. They're going to feel oppositional. Okay. Now, a skill to not be oppositional is to say, I wonder if it might be better, Madam Chair, to stick with such and such. You can speak up. I do, but do it gently and direct your words to the chair of the meeting. Okay, so that you're showing respect. So Randy, I'm wondering. It sounds important. I'm wondering in terms of the agenda, if we we should stick with this. I'm helping you at that point. I'm helping you. But notice Randy's leading it, and I spoke to Randy. I'm honoring her leadership rather than me doing the thing, me saying, Gordon, I think that's off topic. Because again, I know. I'll stop with you after. I'll go to you, Eliza. Anyway, you see, I'm holding up the person, because not everybody's great at this. I'm holding them up with what I'm confident they were wanting to do. Now, she could have always told me, I think, we should keep going. That's fine. But is staying with the group. So now we're talking about 8, 10, 12, 16 people. And this is where people dominate. They don't so much dominate when they're on topic. They often dominate by bringing in extraneous stuff. Now, if they're on topic and somebody is going on too long, then there are a number of things you can do. And I'm sure if we had a full day workshop, I'd pull these mostly out of you because a number of you, I'm sure a lot of you know how to do this. You say something like, I'm going to pick on Dan now because you keep talking back to me. So Dan, I just signal him not to. Anyway, Dan, I'd like to make an important point. Let's hold that, and then let's get some other voices in. So I just stopped him. I affirmed, and then I said, let's get some other voices in. Okay, and then if a number of people want to talk at the same time, I don't look at them. And here's, because I want to get other people, and here's a big mistake not to do. Dan has just gone on, and then I say, so Dan, I think what you're saying is, I paraphrase, why is that a bad idea? He's keep going. He's going to keep going. So you have to be willing to, now if somebody's shy in a group and they say something, well, then you might do that. So that was a really important point, Mary, that I just, wanted to just say that. But not for Dan. Dan doesn't need that support. He doesn't need somebody. And I had to learn that the hard way because I'm a therapist. And so we paraphrase people, And so what I've learned is somebody who's hogging that thing, don't paraphrase them. Acknowledge, affirm. And the thing is when you affirm, so Dan, an important point, I want to spread this out. You stop looking at him. Right? I just was starting to look around. And I don't say, is that okay? Yeah, don't, all those polite things, don't do. Okay, because you're giving them too much power. I'm not really asking for permission. And if you do more of that caretaking stuff, he's actually maybe going to feel worse. Right? Is that okay? I'm concerned that not enough people are talking. I'm just shaming him now. He's just an extroverted guy with lots to say, a valuable, hopefully a valuable group member, but he has to learn how to be in this group. And one of the ways is to help, these are ways to shape him in the group, okay? But you don't let him just go on. And there's, again, general things like, okay, at this point, I think we've heard from a number of people on this topic. This is when 2 people are going at it, 2 or 3 people. So we heard 3 voices. Important to be here. Right now, I'd like to hear from others who have not gotten into the conversation so far. I did not say you guys are dominating. I just said let's spread it around and have signaled to them. And now if somebody were to obstruct there, I would say right now, well, we're hearing some other folks. Heard what you had to say. For right now, just like hold off so we get more in the group. That would be for somebody who's really oppositional. If somebody's oppositional enough, talk to them after the meeting. And here's how you begin. I'll go back to Dan. You go up to them and you don't say you were misbehaving. You say, so how are the meetings going for you? You get his take, because maybe he's frustrated. Maybe he thinks we're not on topic enough. Maybe there's something else going on. How are you feeling? And then maybe he says, God love him, I think maybe I'm talking too much. Well, you have a lot to say, Dan. And I think, sometimes maybe kind of balancing it off a little bit. I remember saying to somebody once, this was actually a colleague, but she was in a group I was facilitating, and she said, maybe I'm talking, I said, maybe about a third less talking. Okay, but you have to prevent people from taking. Okay, so moving ahead here pretty quickly. Calling on quiet group members. Anything you wanted to say about this? Keeping track of time. Bringing discussion items to closure. So that you finish this, and you are saying, okay, what have we decided on this? What's the next step for this one? The next step is Pam is going to, blah, blah, blah. But you want to spread that around. So it sounds like we need more information before we can go ahead on this. Who would like to get that information? Write it down. That's the closure. Not just, well, we should all know more. Okay. Where are we? If we've decided on something, what's the next implementations? So for each item on the agenda, other than a routine report, when you finish it out, you say something like, okay, so our goal here was to generate ideas. It seems like we've generated a number of ideas, maybe more will be coming. So I've been taking notes, or the secretary's taking notes. We have those ideas, so I think it's time to move on. By the way, I don't like to ask people, is it okay to move on? I think that's, people do that, and I think it's too one-downish. Does that make sense? I mean, it's not really a question. And my view is that if you're collaborative and you start to move on, somebody will say one more thing. That's okay. If I say, okay, let's move on now, and you don't think we're ready, speak up, and I'll listen to you. But I'm not going to say, is it okay? And the other thing is, if we're at the end of the time and it's already been substantive, I'm not going to invite, when nobody's speaking up, somebody to say one more thing. Okay, because Dan particularly will take advantage of that. Okay. So close it out if you feel like this is enough. And then knowing, in terms of a group, somebody will speak up if they feel they need to speak up, and I'm not going to tell them not to. But they know it's one more thing before we move on. So next meeting date. Okay, and then this will be the end of my presentation part. We'll have some discussion. A checkout question, and this is the one that I've evolved in my work over the last 25 years, and we tend to use in a lot of Brave Angels meetings. How do you feel about our work in this meeting? So you've just summarized as the leader, this is what we've done, these are the action steps, whatever. And then the checkout, how do you feel about our work in this meeting? Up to 30 seconds, so you have to allow enough time. You have to allow enough time. So shut the agenda down, depending on the size of the group, 7 minutes or so before you end. And then go around the opposite direction from how you did before. So if I started here on the check-in, I would start here on the checkout. Go last. How do you feel about our work in this meeting? This is a classic thing that's important in groups who come together to accomplish something, is some kind of evaluation of what we've done. But when I attended groups, community organizers do this. I learned a lot of this from them. But I never thought those were real evaluations. Because to do a full evaluation, you need a half an hour to evaluate an hour-long meeting. But this allows some final words. How do you feel about our work in this meeting? And in starting, when I introduce this to the group, I have a paragraph that describes what's appropriate here. So what's not appropriate is make your last big point. I still think we should be reading such and such book. This is not appropriate. And so you have to help people learn that this is about how we've worked together, what we accomplished here, how we've worked together. And it allows people another round of saying something. And you also learn, this is creating a context where people can say unpopular things. Somebody can say I'm frustrated. It's okay. And by the way, you always go last because you want to acknowledge and you want to, if there's something important that somebody's frustrated about, like we didn't get to everything in the agenda, you might say that at the end as the leader. I feel a little badly that we didn't get to such and such, and I heard some folks say that, and promise we'll. So how do you feel about our work in this meeting? And here's my recommendation. If you want to adopt this, you need group permission, by the way. You can't go, well, I've been to a convention, and I learned from Bill Doherty, this is what we're going to do. This is not a good way to implement. But if people want to implement this, I recommend, and this may sound rigid, read the question, put them on the agenda and read them word for word. Because what I've seen over the years, people will say, oh, I have to riff. So instead of saying, how do you feel about work in this meeting? It's like, so how do you feel we're doing on our goals? You have 5 minutes left in the meeting. That's a bad question. If you're going to do that question, it would be in the desired outcome. One of the desired outcomes, an evaluation of whether we're accomplishing our goals on getting more others into our, and then you'd have a big chunk of time, and a process for doing that. That's not what you do at the end of the meeting. And I had a colleague who was teaching this, and I'm sitting there kind of observing, helping, and he did that. He said, so why doesn't everybody say, you think we're moving towards our goals? And people were, and I said to him, why did you do that? And he said, well, I don't like to be rigid. I just like to kind of riff on things. And so I have a colleague who taught me a lot about groups, said, sometimes play the notes. Just play the notes. Learn the piano, play the damn notes. And then when you're really, really good at it, you riff on it. But sometimes it's really helpful to play the notes. Field-tested questions that are, so to finish that up then, and that accomplishes, even the quiet members have spoken twice, have gotten their words in. This works cross-culturally. I've done this with a lot of groups, including immigrant groups from Africa and others, and I had a graduate student from Kenya who said that this process, because a lot of times during the agenda, I don't have time to get into this, you'd ask everybody in the room for their view on something. So this is the question, blah, 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 give everybody a moment to think about it, and then go around the entire group. And a lot of times there will be maybe 3 times, certainly 2, for everybody in the group to talk. So my colleague from Kenya said that this puts enough democracy into traditional hierarchical cultures like this. Okay, because everybody gets in, but in the opening of all of this, there's enough freelance discussion that some people will talk more, which is fine. In the communal culture, the elders are going to talk more, but everybody gets in. So I want to go back to you, Randy, in terms of timing, because I had 3 o'clock in my mind. The workshop ends at
Started at 3:45 according to.
3:45.
Oh, excuse me, 2:45. In the break.
Oh, 2:40.
In the same they said all breakouts were from 3 to 4:30.
Oh,
Yeah, but-
that's what they said there, but Woga said something different, so I don't know.
So we started. Shall we go 15 more minutes? I think that was in the original. Okay.
Yeah.
That was in the original.
They told us that.
Because I know I got all confused on that. Okay.
The next step is what?
Okay, so here's what I'd like to do then, that's the end of my presentation. I'd like you to ask yourself, what's something that you've heard here that you might want to try out? Some of it could just be reinforcing that which you already know, because I'm aware I'm talking to people, many of whom have a lot of experience, so not everything was a great pearl to everybody. But there may be something in what I said that would be useful for you to try out in facilitating groups and being group members. I'd like you now to take a moment to think about what that is. So take 60 seconds to think about your take home. Okay, back in your groups, 4 minutes.
She wrote 1 sentence, huh? What'd you put?
Why don't you turn around there?
What?
Up to you. Sure.
I was thinking.
I don't know if they really talk about this, but I'm very curious about the community, because things are different.
can't walk away from somebody, you can't stand somebody, you have something from somebody. What can you do to interrupt people? It's just hard.
I just shout over them. I just raise my voice and say, call my name. So Martin, thank you. Just keep talking. And it works okay, as long as what you're doing is
I was just talking like, I lead a lot of meetings with people who are not outside of the room. What do you do? And like, try to fill the space. I think my problem is so people say the same thing.
Anyway, that's some of the not having a certain size, I know it's coming. It's easy.
Yeah. Well, I was just telling her, I lead other meetings where I think the problem is the purpose of it is like a check-out, when we have to do these meetings. So like, what are you for?
All right. Okay, everybody, clap once if you can hear me. Clap twice if you can hear me. Clap 3 times if you can hear me. Thank you. Okay. So let's have some sharing about something you want to try out or reinforce that you already do. You're real talkative a minute ago. Yes.
Bill, I really will benefit from 2 ideas you gave me, the opening and the closing with the question that gives everybody a voice. And then the other piece, which is the graceful way to redirect the conversation from somebody with too much of a voice relative to the collection or count in the room. And the way this is a benefit, I think will be a benefit to me, is my desire to be productive with the meeting structurally given the tools to create conclusion why the meeting is still productive. And I think that's really important in this work, and I thank you for
Mm-hmm, okay, thank you. Yeah, great, somebody else, yes.
Piggybacking on that, we've done the opening and closing, but the 1 minute limit or the appropriate time
yeah,
limit
yeah.
was huge because it can go off the rails.
Right.
Right off the bat. And then
Yeah.
the other, a related question, which is, it's a new group.
Mm-hmm.
How much time do you devote to introductions?
Oh,
and
yeah,
that,
okay.
And balance of also getting them feeling right away that stuff's gonna get done?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, a new group, I give, like, let's say if it's a group of 12 people, I'll reserve 20 or 25 minutes for those openers. It's really worth it. And with the question, everybody would get a certain amount of time to say why they're here, what's important. Like in my community projects where people are coming together to do some work for the community, one of my opening questions, your name, where you live, situate yourself. And then I have a two-part question, and one of them is, because they're joining the group, what do you want to do for the community by being part of this group? And what do you want to do for yourself? And I explain the questions. I give everybody a moment of reflection. I say that, Greg, I'm going to be starting with you, and then I'll be going to Dan, and so people know which way we're coming. So you're not a deer in a headlight. So those are two really, like how you want to help the community and what you want for yourself. Okay, and then I almost mentioned Carla, but she was going to leave. I knew that. I knew that in my own mind. Anyway, so bye. So if, for the first meeting, there's almost nothing more important than that opener, because this is like why we're here. Okay, why they came, for the world and for themselves, and I don't let them skip for themselves, because there has to be some sort of what's in it for me. What drives me? How do I hope to be fed by this? Not just how do I save the world? Yes.
What comes up for me is sort of the other side. In our alliance, we meet 3 times a month.
Yeah.
Pretty much the same dozen people every time.
Oh,
The agenda is very, very practical.
Yeah.
Can we do this in such and such a day?
Right.
Who could moderate this?
Right.
And so my sense is that the answer to these questions is already there.
Mm-hmm.
It's understood for the group that we share, the same sort of opening and closing.
Right.
And so it feels right now, and again, maybe we're not doing best practices, but it feels like it would be unnatural to do that. Because people would say, well, it's to do what we're here to do. I don't know.
Yeah. My input for you is to vary your agenda so sometimes it's enriching.
Huh?
I'm sorry, could you?
Vary your agenda so that sometimes it's enriching. Take one of your meetings and have people tell stories about their life and experiences and how it led them to political attitudes. Something to share. Who's a political hero to you? Okay, I mean, just in other words, I'm glad you really brought that up, because my norm is that if people are volunteers and don't have to be there, it's got to feed them in some way. And being on a committee, a task committee, may not be enough. And so I would put some other stuff in the agenda. If you have an ongoing group, it may be you don't want to do this. I just have learned you start this way in a group, you connect them this way, you connect them with every meeting. When's there a moment for somebody to say, I've been so distracted from my work because my mother's dying? They can say that in their check-in. They can bring their humanity. When's there a way to say, I love being part of this group, or this was an exciting meeting, or I can't wait for the next? If you don't have a checkout, there's no chance to say that. So it brings some humanity to it. Yeah. That's been my experience. Yeah. Randy.
What I think would be most useful to me is disciplining myself to think about the desired outcomes, which would force me to make the agenda work, and that I think would help the meeting move a little bit more smoothly. So it's sort of like making sure that I discipline myself.
Yeah. Music to my ears.
Yeah.
Because that one is it's so tempting to say, what shall we do? Instead of what do we want to come out? Just a couple more and then we'll finish up.
I love the framing of thinking about facilitation not as an imposition of discipline, but as a service to the group.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's huge. Thank you. Yeah, huge. And people know it. They know it when you structure up somebody, when you say, let's get back, because otherwise their eyes roll. And they know it. They know when it's a power move, and they know when you're doing it for the group.
In terms of, that's for another meeting, sometimes I find myself saying that's actually outside the scope of this group.
So she just said, just another meeting, it's outside of the scope of the group. Yes. Sometimes, and this is why you have to know what our mission is here and what the nature of this group is. So think it's a task group. We've been assigned by the larger group, and we're the committee to do this. And then somebody says, I think blah, blah, blah. No, this is what we agreed to do. We're delivering this thing, and we're not deciding. This is, if you're clear about what the group is, then the leader can say that's outside of the scope of this group.
Well, and it's also, groups tend to function below what they're capable of, but they also need to be able to gauge their own capacity.
Yeah.
And sometimes the work of the group is to build that capacity, and it doesn't have energy to expend elsewhere.
Exactly. So sometimes you want to say, just as a group member now, that sounds like a wonderful idea, and I'm looking around a group that's struggling to do what we've already agreed to do, and to take on lobbying in the state capitol. I'm speaking as a member of the group now, seems a lot. Now, people may say, Bill, no, you're underestimating the group. Happy to hear that. But sometimes you're saving the group because somebody has this spectacular idea, and you're barely accomplishing doing some workshops.
Right.
And then somebody has an idea, usually not the worker bee.
Jump in.
They're hoping Pam will do it. And so as a leader, you're not just a facilitator, you're a leader. And a sensitive leader, because people can always say, Bill, I don't think that's right. But you're a leader. And sometimes, like you and I are in a group, the workshop review team, and then somebody was asking us to do, that's not what we do. We don't develop workshops. We review what other people give us, okay? Because somebody said, why don't you guys develop such and such? Well, no, we have a charter. We review. Oh, we're not going to be the group that does all the workshops. So I said that, and Randy was in it. We said, yes, exactly. That's not what we do here. That's not our mission. And so that's a leadership function. So last thing I'll say, so it may be hard for you to say this is a bad idea, but you can give me a level of affirmation. I've been asked by the Office of Field Operations to develop a series of online modules that would go into all of this stuff plus a lot more of, beginning stages of groups, middle, how do you end a group? How do we were talking over here about how do you get everybody's voice in on decision making? Not just at the beginning and the end. There are techniques. I've been holding off doing it because I don't want to put all that work into it and nobody uses it. Maybe you could tell me later if it'd be useful or any of you would. But yeah, okay, thank you. Yeah, and so promise me you will look at it. Because this is, if we're trying to change the country and the world, Gandhi had a great line that attributed to him. How are we going to get the British out of India if we can't come to meetings sometimes? On time, right? And so this is about our effectiveness. Coming together using everybody's time. And then if you're on at the checkout, people will feel, and people should feel more energized at the end of one of these meetings than they did coming in. More energized. Because they come in and the kid was sick and they, traffic or Zoom, another Zoom meeting. And if you do it well, they will go, yes, this was good. This was really important. Okay.
Yes, but.
Yes, and.
Oh, thank you. Yes, and. Some of us learn in different ways. I loved it. This is a great meeting, but it's going to dribble out of my head by the time I get back to the door. Please have everything written down as much as you can so I can print it up and review it.
So what if I do this, and I again, thank you for saying you would look at it, but it's a big undertaking. I think I would dread is to put all that work in and at another convention somebody says, we need more stuff on how to do meetings, and we have it in the archive somewhere. But that would be PowerPoints, modules, it would be the whole 9 yards, and you could keep reviewing them. You could go back to it. Okay, we're done.
Okay.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.